As Global Missions Pastor at the People's Church in Toronto, Sandra Ryan connects both local and international mission partners in various ministries. Her role is to help facilitate services, mission teams, and resources.
Tell us a little bit about the Global Outreach Conference. What is it? What are your objectives? What is it about?
So every year, as a church, in the fall, we gather together for 3 weeks, and we really dwell in our priorities, our priority of mission, and allow God to help us examine our lives in light of those priorities again. So we invite speakers in who share stories that inspire, that challenge. We have prayer together as a people so that God can speak to us in terms of where He's leading us next. And then as a people, committing ourselves, our resources, our time, again, to our shared priorities and mission. And that's really what the DNA conference is about.
People's Church is known as a missions-focused church or has a missions heart. How do you decide which partners you're going to work with?
Collaboration in mission is a hugely important value for us. We really believe in the body of Christ around the world. And that has always been. So we'll never think, how can we do this as the People's Church? We'll always say, how can we come alongside people, or who's already doing this, and let us in some way support and help. And I love being part of that collaboration process.
And there are some really incredible stories that come out of people making personal sacrifice to share the good news of Jesus around the world.
It's interesting that you use the word sacrifice, because almost to a person, any of the missionaries that I've spoken to would rarely see it as sacrifice. As soon as you become part of what God's doing, outside observers like you and I, we would see it as sacrifice. But for these people, they really see it as privilege, as receiving so much more from the experience than they feel that they are giving. And
Beautiful.
it's a beautiful statement, and I think many of our missionaries, they live in that way.
How do you define missions, and what would you say? What is a missionary?
So what was the mission of Jesus Christ? It was to bring salvation and to bring in the kingdom. And we use those words. But we then have to do the hard work. So I love this question, the hard work of what does that look like in my life? What does that look like in our church? And there is no one answer to that. So my principles would be, it would be Christ-centered. To be like Jesus is every believer's, to have Christ in us and to live that out is our mission.
So if somebody is watching or hears about the Global Outreach Conference or something, and is stirred and wants to do something, but they're really not sure, they're not clear yet in what way they would want to get involved and help and make a difference, what would you say to them?
The number one thing I would say is, listen. God's already speaking to you. God's already spoken to you. So make sure you're listening. Don't be looking and saying, well, that person over there is really involved in mission. I'm just here. Listen, because God is saying something to you. So listen expectantly. And listen in such a way that you really actually believe that there's a way that you can become involved. So the listening, the getting into the Word as a body. Who are you in relationship with? Who's inspiring you? Who's encouraging you? Who's speaking into you and saying, wow, I see this gift in you? And I think it's just going to emerge so clearly what God is inviting you to be part of. And usually the body of believers that you plural, to be part of. And there's your team, and you're an important part of that team, and God's just going to say, here you go.
Sandra, I can't thank you enough for taking time.